Hey, this is Mr. Chart. I'm just going to walk you through how to set up your file and what you need to do for this assignment. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to redesign the school map. Right now it kind of looks sort of chaotic and it's really hard to read, and we discussed a bunch of the reasons why that might not be useful as a map in class. So now we need to set up our file and design a new map. So I'm actually not going to use this to design my map with, because this isn't very accurate. So we're just going to close this. This particular folder is attached to the team's assignment. This contains all the original maps and files. So the one I want is this PDF right here that says all buildings. So this is just a layout of all the different buildings on campus, right? So let's download this and use this to make our map. So I'm going to click on this download button at the top of the screen. It's going to send it to my downloads folder. So let's go and make sure we organize our stuff. So here's the PDF. What I would like to do is organize my files. So in my OneDrive here, I'm just going to make a new folder, and we're going to call this flat map. And let's put everything in that folder so that we keep everything organized. So I'm going to drag my PDF into the flat map folder. There we go. And then let's make an Illustrator file. So go to Illustrator, and we're going to click on Create New. And what I'd recommend you do is make like a small handheld map, something that you could easily print out. We might make a poster version later. For now, I'm just going to keep it at the letter document size. If you don't see this template, go to the print category, and letter should be the first option. And then you also want to make sure it's landscape orientation for the document. And then we'll just give it a name. We're just going to call this flat map for now. Flat map. And we're going to call it version 1 because we might make some adjustments and changes to this. So I'm going to click create. And then I want to make sure that once this opens, I save this file to my project folder. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. And then I'm just going to make sure I go down to my OneDrive flat map folder, and I'm going to save it in here. So click Save. Click OK. All right, so now we need to set up our template layer, and we need to make our artwork layer. So the template layer is going to contain the map picture. So for us, it's this PDF of all the buildings, the architectural layout. So we're going to drag this file into our open document, and that's going to place it in there. A couple of things you should do when you place an image into your file. You can go to the Properties panel, and you can embed a copy of it. So select your image, go to Properties, go to Quick Actions, right, down here. In Quick Actions, just click on the little Embed button, right, and that's just going to embed an extra copy in there. And then you're going to want to shrink this so that it fits on your document. So I'm just going to rotate it, right, like that. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm just going to shrink it without stretching it, right? You want to make sure you don't stretch and warp your map idea. We're just going to kind of shrink it so that it fits on the paper here. And that looks like that's pretty good, right dead center. To snap our document into our window, hit Control-0 or Control+ to zoom back in. And then let's go back to the Layers panel here, and we're going to make this a template layer. So double-click off to the right of Layer 1. Checkmark the box that says Template. Right? These are our layer options. Anytime you double-click on a layer, you open up the layer options. Right? And we want this to be a template so that it's kind of dim and it doesn't move. It's locked, and then it also doesn't print because we don't want to see this when we print the map. So now we're going to make a new layer for our artwork. So click on the New Layer button here, and on this layer, this is where we're going to start to draw our map. So right now, we just need the outlines of things. So we're just going to call this layer Building Outlines. And I recommend you separate your layers by what you're going to put on each layer. So this is just going to be Building Outlines, right? So again, double click on a layer name to rename it. Name it Building Outlines, right? And try to organize your layers. So on the Building Outlines layer, I'm just going to go and make black outlines here. I'm going to set my stroke color to black, and I'm going to use my pen tool here. And you know, you want straight lines, so there's a couple of things you can do to ensure that you're using straight lines. With the pen tool, you can hold down the Shift key when you're drawing, right? So if I'm outlining these buildings here, if I hold down Shift, that'll constrain my lines and make them nice and straight. You can also turn on your guides and your grids. So I'm going to switch to my selection tool. If you're using a selection tool, right, like the black arrow here, and you click off of your shapes and go to the properties panel, you're going to see some of the the visibility icons for some of your tools that will assist with keeping lines straight. So we want to turn on our rulers. We want to turn on our grid, right? That way we can kind of see and line up our lines with those. And then you can turn on snap to grid if you want. And what this does is when you draw, it just kind of snaps all your lines into the grid. So every time I draw and every time I click, it'll snap it into the grid. It can be a little annoying if your drawing doesn't really line up with the grid. So in this instance, it does not. So I might not want to use that. But I can still use my rulers to create a guide. Just click and drag on the ruler and drag a guideline out, right? And that will allow you to line up your lines with the guides. So I'm going to turn off snap to grid, and I'm just going to use my guides here and my smart guides, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key while I'm drawing to make sure everything's lined up nice and straight. You do want to make this as polished as you can, so try to keep everything nice and lined up. Make sure you're holding down Shift, make sure everything is touching, and that'll make it easier to add color with live paint later. Your basic goal at this point is to just make sure you outline the rooms, and then when you're ready, I would make maybe a new layer, and for that new layer, maybe call it the room numbers, and then we can add text with our text box and label each room number. So again, I'm on a new layer. I'm going to go to my type tool now, and then I'm going to click one time to make type, and I can't remember which room this is. I think it's 200 maybe. If you're not sure, again, look at some of the maps in the map folder, and you know, once you type text, you can highlight that by, you know, highlighting it with your I-beam. You can then go over to your character settings in here and change the size of the type and all that. And that way it just makes it really organized. So like all your text is on one layer, all your room numbers or your room building outlines are on one layer. And it makes it really easy to organize and edit these as you go forward. So your goal, again, is to redesign this map, redraw everything, and kind of label it and make it easy to read and easy to use. So try to do that by Friday.